wanted to, start off the show tonight, just talking a little bit of news, some big news that in the happenings of college football. Obviously, this week, pretty big news for an ACC foe who has been kind of down on their luck for the better part of the last decade, but has made the biggest splash hire of this coaching carousel so far. None other than Virginia Tech going and getting, former Penn State head coach James Franklin. I wanted to talk about this because I do think this is a interesting development for Clemson in a lot of ways. And not just Clemson, like the other powers within the ACC. Your Miami, the Florida States. When they're good. The programs that have a lot of buying power, a lot of brand recognition. I think ultimately, like for the sake of the conference, I mean, I think it's a big move. It's bold and it's potentially an opportunity for the ACC to elevate one of its powers that has been kind of stuck in the mud for quite a while. But I do think it's going to be interesting as far as recruiting is concerned. Clemson has certainly gotten their fair share of kids from Virginia in recent years. James Franklin has proven himself to be a very good recruiter, if nothing else. And
yeah,
I think it's a really, really natural fit for Blacksburg. And he already has a lot of ties to the area and a lot of familiarity recruiting that area. And they just recently made a really, really big financial commitment to football. So I mean, I don't know, when you got the news, like what did you think about this hire in terms of like what it means for the conference, for Clemson? Is this going to move the needle? I tend to think it does. It is, but it is also interesting because Clemson does play Virginia Tech next season. So that'll be we'll get Dabo Swinney versus James Franklin in his first season at Virginia Tech. That'll be a fun one. But yeah, I mean, what were your kind of initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so initial thoughts for me, just from a Virginia Tech standpoint, I thought it was a home run hire. I think it is a home run hire. I think they probably got the right guy in town in Virginia Tech, and for those out there that may think of Virginia Tech a certain way, that's a very proud program with a lot of tradition. They care about football. That's the reason that they've made this move and they've hired James Franklin. And I think, overarching for the ACC and for Clemson, Virginia Tech, I think, just became, a scary team. I think in the future, James Franklin is going to turn that program around, and they are going to become one of the contenders in the ACC year in and year out. I truly believe that James Franklin has proven that he's a winner in every stop that he's gone to. Obviously, it didn't work out in Penn State. He could never really win the quote unquote big game. Close to making the national championship last year, but came up a play or two short there. Never really beat the big dogs in the Big Ten. Talking about mainly Ohio State. They essentially, for James Franklin's entire tenure at Penn State, he won every single game he was supposed to, but never could beat the teams that he was an underdog to. And ultimately, that's kind of what was his demise at Penn State. And I get it from a Penn State standpoint, but at the end of the day, I think Penn State they might end up regretting moving on from Franklin so quickly. And by quickly, I mean 1 year removed from a college football playoff berth and just this short of a national championship. We'll see who they ultimately end up hiring. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think it worked out beautifully for Virginia Tech. I don't think there was a better hire out there for Virginia Tech, and with his ties to the area and all that kind of stuff, I think sort of a homecoming to him, and I think it's a home run hire for them. It's not great for Clemson because I think Virginia Tech's going to get a whole lot better. You mentioned he's a great recruiter. He's gonna amp up the talent at Virginia Tech. They have a lot of traditions. Inner Sandman. It's a tough place to play, regardless of kind of how good the football team is, but it's going to become a lot harder of a place to play because I believe they're going to get a whole lot better on the football field, and they've made a huge commitment, and yeah, it's going to be they're going to be a contender year in and year out in the ACC in the near future, I believe.
Yeah, I tend to think so too. I mean, and when you talk about the financial investment, I think they said something. I think the number that was given was $229 million put into Virginia Tech. I mean, that is pretty astonishing. A pretty astonishing number. And I think that's for all of athletics. I don't think that's just for football. But still, I mean, it tells you that they're taking this seriously again. I mean, I definitely feel like there have, at least at Virginia Tech, there's certainly been kind of a lack of emphasis in terms of like the revenue sports. I mean, they've kind of taken a nosedive, whether in basketball and football. And so,
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see kind of what that means in the near future for Virginia Tech, and Clemson as far as their recruiting efforts in that area. Yeah, but I think it's ultimately good for the ACC if you care about that and you care
Yeah.
about the conference being, respectable again. That Virginia Tech being good certainly helps a ton. Um, I'm interested to see kind of what the staff looks like for Franklin there. There he has a lot of connections, and there's certainly a lot of people he could call up. I'm intrigued to see kind of what his strategy is coming in, but I certainly expect them to be a bigger player on the recruiting trail because I mean, listen, they have not been able to lock down their home state talent. I mean,
For a
and
long time.
for quite some time now. It
Yeah.
didn't used to be that way, but it's certainly been that way for the better part of 10, 15 years. I mean, you have programs like Penn State went under James Franklin and Clemson, South Carolina. Obviously the Big Ten schools. And the SEC schools are also go into Virginia and get kids. It's been pick of the litter really for other programs for a while in that state. But James Franklin being there certainly I think could change things a little bit, and they start to keep some of that in-state talent home. I think that's ultimately good for that program. But the funniest thing is that I don't understand these coaches sometimes because like Penn State was paying James Franklin $49 million not to coach, and now I think they only have to pay him $9 million now that he took another job. But
Right.
if I got paid that much money not to work, you wouldn't see me working. I'd go do something else. But I mean, I guess that it does tell you kind of how much these coaches love the game and love coaching because
Yeah, they just want to coach ball,
yeah.
and that's very evident because I mean you're right. That's a whole lot of money not to work.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to pay me that much not to work, but these guys love coaching ball and that's what they want to do, and he moves on and takes the job at Virginia Tech, and it's gonna be interesting to watch the trajectory of that program over the next probably 2 to 3 years and see how quickly he can kind of rebound that because they are a good brand and they have probably one of the best environments in college football as far as home stadium environments and with his ability to recruit and the amount of talent that comes out of that state. It's going to be much tougher for Clemson to kind of recruit out of that state now, and I believe he's going to turn it around. I don't think Virginia Tech could have made a better hire than what they just did. And I know all the talk about James Franklin, and a lot of the criticism is deserved about how he can't win the big game, but in a place like Virginia Tech, I think they nailed it, man. And with their recommitment to athletics and kind of the financial commitment that they've made recently, they could become a huge problem in the ACC, particularly for our Tigers. So um, hopefully we can stay ahead, but they will challenge Clemson. here in the next 2 to 3 seasons. No doubt about it.
But to transition, I kind of want to, wrap up Louisville a little bit, just kind of give our final thoughts. We've talked about this game, in the post game show. It was certainly a bittersweet type of victory. You watched it and you're happy the team got a win, but you didn't really feel much differently about, the quality of this group or whether or not this team has really gotten that much better. On the rewatch, there's not really anything that made me feel any differently.
No.
To be completely honest with you, this was just a game where, you made less mistakes than the other team, and I think that's more than you can say about a lot of games this season. But ultimately, this was not a win that I feel like was a needle mover or one where it's like, man, now this team is really building some momentum. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they come out these next 2 weeks and just absolutely plaster, both opponents. That'd be great. That'd be a great way to end off this miserable regular season it's been. But I just the things I've seen and obviously with some of the recent injuries, I have a hard time believing that that's ultimately what this game meant. But TPC, when you watch this game back, if you had a chance to, do you have anything that really, stuck out to you that you didn't really notice when we watched it the first time?
Not a whole lot, man. Honestly, going back and looking at parts of the game, some of it was worse than I remember it, honestly. Like, this was one of the ugliest football games that I've seen in quite some time. And, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but, it looked like at various points in time in this game, both teams badly wanted to lose, and the other team just would not take it. And eventually, Clemson ended up making, one or two less mistakes and ultimately ended up winning the game and beating Louisville on a Friday night. But it was a crazy game. Louisville was making, boneheaded penalties in the fourth quarter that were costing them, immensely with field position. The quarterback taking a big sack when you absolutely could not do it. Should have thrown the ball away, but didn't. Ultimately takes the only sack of the game. In the worst possible time you could take it. It just felt like watching this game, it was two teams that looked badly coached, that looked like they were unprepared, and that looked like they frankly didn't want to win the game. And I'm just being completely honest. That's what it looked like. Ultimately, am I happy that Clemson won the game? Yeah, 100%. I'm absolutely happy that Clemson won the game. I'm happy that they were able to pull it out. Ultimately it's good for the Tigers. They get a chance to hopefully, achieve bowl eligibility in the at the end of November here, or the middle of November here, this weekend against Furman, which I believe they will do. But it was an ugly game. It was a game riddled with a lot of mistakes. Um, at times the offense, played well. At times they looked clunky and, out of sync like they have for much of the season. Same thing with the defense. Um, it was just not a clean game, but a game that I'm glad they won. It's tough to go on the road. It's tough to beat a ranked opponent on the road. It's even tougher to do it on a weeknight, a Friday night. That tends to be, you know, the games where the craziest things happen, and that's kind of what happened in this game. It's Clemson's first ranked road win in a long time. So again, I'm happy for it, but there's still a lot that this team is not doing well. And if you're a Clemson fan and you want to be a realist about it, you can't sit here and look at that game and be like, oh, Clemson is just suddenly turning a corner and we've won back-to-back games against teams that we thought, you know, early on when we were losing games that we would probably lose to Florida State and we would probably lose to Louisville. Um, Ultimately, we've beaten both of those teams, but let's not pretend like this team has turned a corner suddenly. I think it's admirable that this team is still fighting. They're clearly not quitting. That is clear. But I still hold true to the fact, Jordan, that this is just not a good football team. They're not quitting. They're continuing to play as hard as they can play. But the fact still remains, this is not a good football team. And if you watch this Louisville game back, that's kind of where you'll end up at the end of watching it.
Yep. I mean, you could have just as easily been on the wrong side of this football game. I mean, Louisville outgained you. They were the better team in terms of success rate. They outrushed you. I mean, really, just they weren't able to. They made the more costly mistakes in the key moments, and that was
Yep.
that was kind of the difference in the football game. But
shout out to the Louisville kicking game.
Oh yeah, kickers, man!
Shout out
both
to
kickers, man.
2 missed field goals and a missed extra point. There's the difference in the game.
Shout out to the Louisville receiver that decided to throw hands with Corian Gibson in the red zone and
right.
kill their field position. I don't know, man. That was a shout out to Miller Moss for refusing to throw anything further than 10 yards. So. I mean, listen, it was a game that very much felt it was strange, the contrast between this Louisville team you played than the one you played in Death Valley last year. They looked far less prepared, and I mean, yeah, they didn't have their arguably their best offensive weapon, but I mean, I haven't seen a Jeff Brom team look that poor against at least a team that they actually care about beating. They obviously the Cal game the previous week was an indicator that they're certainly not incapable of playing bad, but I thought with it being Clemson, I thought they would look a little bit better than that. But hey, listen, you got the win, and that's about all you can ask for. Obviously the positives, I think Adam Randall was your best offensive weapon, ran the ball extremely effectively. In this game, had a few explosive runs. Kay Klubnik, I think honestly, the people are going to talk about the goal line sequence, which was really awful. That was really bad, but I think he made some high level throws in this game. He was making especially some of those tight window throws. He made a couple of those in that game that were big on a couple of key drives. It wasn't a fantastic performance by him, but he took care of the football mostly, and I think he's still largely playing okay. I haven't felt like he's been the reason your offense when your offense is bogged down. It hasn't felt like he's the reason. So I guess that's positive. That's improvement. I think he's playing okay. So I think that's about all I have on offense, and then defensively. I mean, you did a good job getting after the quarterback. Still gave up too many. Still gave up some really rough looking runs. Obviously, Keywan Brown kind of just had his way with the second level of Clemson's defense. So that was not fun to watch, but they weren't able to capitalize. So, and you got the stops when you needed them. So shout out to the defense for getting those timely stops that many times this year they haven't been able to. So. Yeah, I don't have any much more to say about this game. Is there anything else you wanted to hit on?
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of it. It was a much needed win for the Tigers. If they wanted to achieve bowl eligibility, which obviously they have one of the longest streaks in college football when it comes to being bowl eligible. So it's good that they have a realistic opportunity to do that. And that's really all this game meant. You've played spoiler to Louisville's season, which is a unique position for Clemson. We haven't had a lot of opportunity to play spoiler, but in 2025, that's kind of all we have. There's no real postseason for us outside of a low level bowl game. So playing spoiler is the best that we can do. Unfortunately, the Gamecocks pissed away an opportunity, and we could have stole bowl eligibility from them. But of course, they took that from us. We could have beaten South Carolina, won the state championship, and denied them a bowl game. But they can't get out of their own way, much like Clemson can't for most of the season. So here we are. Shout out to the Tigers. I'm glad we won, but it was less than a pretty win. That's for sure. So.
Yep, absolutely. It's certainly not a pretty win. They're certainly not pretty in terms of the outcomes from this game, other than the final score. Of course, we do have some injury news to talk about in this game that is going to affect this team for the remainder of the season. Braden Jacobs and Walker Parks have both been announced as out for the year. Two of your starters at guard. That's a pretty significant blow for this team. I hate it for Walker Parks because obviously he has no eligibility left. He's been one of the longest tenured Clemson offensive linemen ever in terms of starts and snaps and anything you can name. I mean, he's definitely going to be in the history books. And hate it for him, that his last year has kind of played out this way, and it's ended the way it has. But that's the sport, and obviously with his extensive injury history, this was a possibility. But it's a miracle he was even playing football. But I hate it for him. But I'm thankful for everything that he gave. He literally put his body on the line for this university and for this football program. So, Walker Parks, one of the best, that you could ask for from that perspective. So, best of luck to him. When he graduates, well, he's already graduated, but when he ultimately leaves and moves on, and but yeah, I hate that this is how it ended, but happy that he got to play football and play the sport that he loves for longer than any of us thought he would just a couple of years ago. So that kind of somber, but it is what it is. This is the nature of the sport sometimes.
Yeah, man, this is college football. Tough blow for the Tigers. You lose both of your, basically your starting right and left guard, out for the season. Walker Parks, man, I hate it for that guy. He's done so much for this university. He's done so much for this team. He's put his body on the line. He's put his ankle on the line. This man's had countless surgeries, and it just sucks that his last hurrah, if you will, ended this way, with him going out with injury. I hate it for him, but I'm glad that we had a guy like Walker Parks along this offensive line, and I, if you know him, that he'll be out there coaching up those guys and trying to get them ready to go out there and play just as well as he would have went out there and played, and that's why he's special. So shout out to Walker Parks. We're gonna miss him when he's gone. We felt his absence over his various injury stints since he's been at Clemson. He is a presence when he's there and healthy enough to play on the offensive line, particularly at the right guard position. But we're not going to have him, and he'll take on that coaching role, and he'll be a good teammate. And shout out to him, and I hope that he gets the honor that he deserves this weekend for senior day. And then Braden Jacobs, what a freak accident, man. Like, after the ball game is over, the ball game is won, he's celebrating with his teammates, jumps up, lands wrong on his foot, and he's now out for the rest of the season. What a freak accident. What a crazy injury. Sucks that we're losing him. You ask where the offensive line is going to be from here. Obviously, you got your three guys that have started majority of the season there, and then Harris Sewell will step in, and Colin Sadler will step in at both guard positions. So those will be the two guys that roll in first. Luckily, Clemson has those two guys that have started quite a bit. Colin Sadler coming back from injury, so hopefully he's feeling much better. And is 100% healthy and able to full go. You don't. It's obviously these two are big losses for the offensive line, but you're fortunate to have guys like Harris Sewell and Colin Sadler to roll in there who have played meaningful snaps for the Tigers this season. I don't think it's going to show up against Furman, so hopefully we can get a best five solidified before rolling into Columbia for the final game of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yeah, it does give you the opportunity to see some of the depth that you're going to be working with next season, if
Yep.
anything. And obviously, this is if you were going to have that injury, I guess this is the time to do it.
Right.
I mean,
I mean, it's
you
a
know,
perfect time to get some younger guys in there. You know,
yeah,
Ronan O'Connell, we've seen him a couple times this year. He's flashed on tape. That dude is nasty. Uh,
yeah,
he he likes to get
physical.
after people. He likes to put people on their back. So you know, I like to see him out there. You know, Harris Sewell, obviously, I've already mentioned, and then Colin Sadler will obviously be out there as well. You know, you're still missing Elijah Thurman. You're missing Braden Jacobs now. You're missing Walker Parks. You know, this has been an offensive line that's had quite a bit of injuries this year. So, but you're going to see that young depth, and you're going to see what you got for next year, which is going to be super important heading into spring.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm interested to see kind of what kind of offensive line rotations we see this weekend. Um, this is, yeah, I mean, this is going to be the opportunity. I mean, you're going to see, obviously with the new redshirt rule. I mean, I think you'll see even more guys. Another guy I'm really interested to see that they've given a lot of praise is Gavin Blanchard.
Gavin
Um,
Blanchard, yep.
hope to see him at times. Who, if you guys remember our talks with Grayson Mann prior to the season, he was one that he was very, very high on early on, and obviously the staff feels the same way. So I want to see what he looks like as a true freshman. See where he is and how ready he could potentially be to play. Here going forward. And yeah, I mean, just seeing some of these younger guys. Your Mason Wades. Watson Youngs. Yeah, like where are these guys as far as their development and do we truly have a strong core of young guys for the future, or is it just a bunch of bodies? Because ultimately we don't know until we see them play, and this will be a good test. And Furman actually has some disruptors on the defensive line that I think could test this group a little bit, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, hate it for, like I said, hate it for Jacobs, hate it for Parks, and yeah, that's not an ideal development for this offensive line that's already had multiple injuries throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, a big question mark moving forward, and honestly, it's maybe it'll be a blessing in disguise for the Tigers because you'll get to see a lot of these young players come play over the next 2 weeks and into the bowl game as we prepare for whatever bowl game Clemson gets selected for. But you'll get a good picture of what you have returning for next season, which will give the coaching staff a direction on, do they need to go pick up an offensive lineman or two in the transfer portal this cycle in order to bridge the gap between some of those younger guys and the guys that are going to be leaving at the end of the season.
Yep, absolutely. But we'll kind of leave it at that. Obviously we wouldn't be talking about Clemson football if we weren't talking about injuries, because that's just been the name of the game with this program for the better part of 3-4 years. Offensive line injuries, never ending. So you hate it, but I hopefully especially in Braden Jacobs' case, you got to see a lot of him, and you saw a lot of good. And you don't want to you want him to rehab this injury properly and get back to full go. And the good news is that it seems like he will be on track to be back by the time spring ball rolls around. So you won't be missing too many reps from that perspective. So yeah, I mean, obviously not great developments for the Tigers, but this Saturday we'll get to see some of the younger guys, and we'll certainly have our thoughts on that in the post game.